Now, before we jump into the specifics of the pillars, I want to talk about your experience first. And what's interesting about this conversation is these two gentlemen have no idea what I'm going to ask them. Is this true? We did not practice any of this?
Nope. I don't know. No clue.
I don't know a single thing.
Yeah. And so you're going to be put on the spot, but that's how it works as leaders, right? We're put on the spot all the time. When you think about communication as a leader and why it matters, why do you think it matters? We know it matters, but specifically, why would you say it matters so much? Random, start with you. I'm going to go to Aaron after that. In your mind, you've been in the game since you were essentially 22 as a leader, right? You're how old now?
36.
36, all right? So 14 years really leading your organization. I'm assuming your communication skills have evolved over time.
I hope so.
So, based on what you know, why does this conversation even matter?
Yeah. So since we are on the spot, it's like it's hard to form, put this in words.
Yeah.
But I mean, we look at like what causes every issue in our organization.
Yeah.
And we kind of brought it down to like three things. One was communication.
Okay.
One was, have they been educated?
Yeah.
And then one was accountability. But I think communication...
Let's say that again. Communication, how they've been educated, and accountability.
Correct. Yeah. And I think really communication really is the key of education and accountability, right?
Because if you stink at communication, pretty hard to have the educational piece.
Correct.
Right? There's the gaps.
And it's hard to hold people accountable.
That's exactly right.
Because that's the communication that everyone feels uncomfortable about. Like, hey, you messed up. How do I do that without offending them? Or, there's this fear that if we have this conversation that it's going to go bad.
Yep.
But we had been reading this book recently, and I just had this epiphany of like the lack of communication is not okay. Like communicating is love, right?
It's
like if we care about people, then we communicate, even if it's hard.
That's right.
So I don't know. That's my thoughts, kind of.
It's great thoughts. And before we go to Aaron, real quick, how much have over the years, over the course of even before you took the helmet 22.
Yeah.
So in your lifetime, how much communication training have you received as a leader?
I mean, honestly, probably none.
Probably none.
Right.
And you speak for probably what percentage of this industry?
I'd say the majority.
Yeah. When it comes to Dirt World, it's pretty safe to say that this ain't something we're being taught. And we certainly aren't being taught this in schools either.
Yeah, I mean, I think like especially like maybe when you get higher up, there's more development courses, but most definitely frontline supervisors, foremen, superintendents, like, hey, they do a skill well, they run equipment well, they set grade well. Let's make them a supervisor. Good luck.
Good luck.
Mm-hmm. Like, how come everybody does what I don't tell them to do? Like,
that's right.
Because you're not communicating well.
Because if we don't have the communication piece, foundationally, we're broken. Great stuff. So, now it's interesting, Aaron. You're similar in your current position to where he was at 22.
Yeah.
You're 26, right? So you've got a perspective on this. You're growing a company at a pace that is significant, right? In the last year, the company's gone from what to what?
And 15 to about 50 people.
Yeah, 15 to 50 people. That's hyper growth.
Yeah.
Right? So why, in your mind, and again, you don't know what we're even going to talk about today, but why does this conversation of transformative leadership communication matter?
For me, it's the vision is so clear in my head, but that's the problem, is it's in my head.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I need to learn how to communicate that effectively to everyone within an organization so they know exactly where we're going. And it is extremely important day to day. It's extremely important for accountability. There's a lot of facets to it, but the biggest thing for me and what I've had to learn, and I'm still learning, still far from figuring out, is how do I paint the picture that's so clear in my head for everybody else to understand that can't see it.
So good. And I like how you said, paint the picture so they can see it. And oftentimes when I'm talking to team members and they're trying to explain something to me, the phrase I will use to them is, I still couldn't paint it based on what you've told me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't paint it yet. Now when I can, we're cooking with gas.
Mm-hmm.
But until that point, we're going to have a gap. We're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes communication so hard, though, is like you think you have it figured out, but then you communicate a certain way and like, oh, that person got it. Like it's so clear to them. And you use that same approach with the next person and
Totally
it doesn't
different.
work at
Always
all.
work.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We're actually going to talk about that here a little bit. Now, one other question before we move on and move to the first pillar of transformative leadership communication, a moment of self-awareness. And this time I'll start with you, Aaron, then we'll go to Randy. If you had to say your biggest communication weakness as of today as a leader, if you had to put it into words, what would it be?
I make the mistake daily that everybody thinks like I do.
Mm.
And it is so far from reality. I think they want the same things, they understand the same things, they have the same background. That's obviously not true. I don't truly believe that, but from a communication standpoint, I make the mistake all the time of thinking that they see what I see and they are coming from the same place I'm at, and it's just not the case.
Yeah. There's a name for that, and this actually covers more than that, but the curse of knowledge, I've heard it before, but the curse of knowledge is when we understand something so well, we feel like, well, the world naturally understands that thing too. And because of that, we end up having these gaps again and fault lines in our communication because of those assumptions, to your point. I get it, why doesn't everybody else get it? Mm-hmm. So, you, Randy, what would you say your biggest weakness is right now?
Right now, I think the one I'm working on the most, I'm not sure if it's the biggest. I think my wife could probably tell you the biggest. Probably better than me.
Very true, very true.
But I'd say, I think what I've realized is asking questions is so important. And so that's what I'm working on right now. Like I think it really helps you understand what it is that they understand and what it is they're feeling and thinking, and then you can communicate more clearly. So I think it's one of my biggest focus right now is, have I asked the right questions? Do I understand what they understand? And then try and tailor back to them.
Oh, this is so good. And we're going to lean into that one because that's going to be one of the major pillars. And so asking questions and then the ability to go deeper and asking the perfect question every time so that you have those breakthrough moments. Like how often do we have light bulb moments with our team members? How often do they make a discovery because of a conversation we had with them? So we're going to talk about that. And so now it's time to buckle up. Let's move on to the first pillar of transformative leadership communication.